So first of all, we have a mazel tov to announce. You have a Shmuel Lewis. He did a shidduch last night for Hashem. He announced it on our WhatsApp group. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, Chav Ches, not Koyach. Okay, so let's talk about what we did yesterday. Yesterday, we really had one simple machlokes. It was all about, for a short time, will you? Oh, so welcome. For a short time, will best and set up an apotropos to protect this ox. The purpose of them setting up the apotropos is clearly not to protect the interests of the Yosy, because for them it's best if there's no apotropos, and then there's no liability. The purpose, Tosfos says, of setting up this apotropos is to protect the public, because we have a public amendment. We have an ox that's running around that's damaging people uncontrolled. So what we'll do is, after it shtoishes 3 times, we'll be mamane an apotropos, and then if it shtoishes another 3 times, it will become a sharamuad, and then they will start paying. There was a discussion in the Gemara if the apotropos pays, if you take the money from the Nichsi Yisayim, but at the end of the day, the Nichsi Yisayim has to indemnify the apotropos. Otherwise, nobody would take on this non-glamorous position. However, what about while it's still a tam? Our Mishnah says while it's a tam, we do not appoint an apotropos, and if it does damage, it's just simply too bad for the victim of the damage. However, the Gemara told us that there's actually a machlokes. There are Tanoim who hold that you will be mamana an apotropos even for a short tam to protect the public, and if damage is caused, the nizik would be able to claim his payment of chati nezek. And that was really the whole sugya. The complication was when the Gemara introduced the shita of Rabbi Yaakov, and the Gemara had a shayla. We ended up having a machlokes between Abaye and Rava, what Rabbi Yaakov holds. Does Rabbi Yaakov hold you are mimana and apotropos for nichsi yisayimim, even if it's a short time, or not? So Abaye learned that according to Rabbi Yaakov you do not, and Rava learned according to Rabbi Yaakov that you do. And it was all based on an interesting halacha that Yaakov paskin that you pay chati nezek, the nichsei yisoimim pay chati nezek, even by a muad. So that's an anomaly. Where does a muad ever pay chati nezek? A muad pays nezek shalem. So in order to arrive at an explanation as to why Rabbi Yaakov would say that a shar hamuad pays chati nezek, there were 2 approaches. One approach was Rava's, and that is we were introduced to 3 other interesting halachas that were a byproduct of this halacha. We were introduced to a halacha that we had once before, that when a short time becomes a muad, do we say now it's a whole new thing, it's a muad? Or do we say the chati nezek of tam is the same chati nezek that you'll pay even if you're sure muad shtoises, which is chati nezek megufay. And the other half is added on to the payment if it's a shor muad, and therefore you pay that chati nezek min ha'aliyah. So there's a machlokes tonight, but Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's not just one new payment of nezek shalom min ha'aliyah. The original chati nezek is still there. The nezek shalom of a muad is just another half a nezek added on. That half a nezek is min ha'aliyah. So we have that component to our sugya. Then we have the sugya of a muad and a tam. Do they require the same level of shmira or not? There was a shita of Rabbi Yehuda who held that a tam requires a higher level of shmira than a muad. So technically, if you had a shor muad and you watched it with the level of shmira required for a muad, but not quite enough to satisfy the requirements of the level of shmira for a tam, so even if you have a shor muad, you're only going to be chayiv the chati nezek of the muad part. I'm sorry, you're only be chayiv the chati nezek of the tam part, because you satisfied the requirements of shmira for the muad part. You just didn't satisfy the requirement for shmira for the tam part. So even in the shor muad, it's possible you only be chayiv chati nezek. Which one? The shor tam portion, because you watched it good enough. So Rabbi Yehuda learned that out of Psukim. Remember, we had a discussion that would Rabbi Yehuda ever hold that it's possible that a tam could be more chomer than a muad? Remember the payments So the Gemara said, as a matter of fact, yes. When it comes to Shmira, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a Tam needs a bigger Shmira, and that's because of a pasuk that I guess we'll encounter when we get to the Sugi of Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, the way the chips fall, according to Rava, is you had a Sharamud, you're not chayiv this second half because you watched it good enough for the Sharamud part, but you didn't watch it good enough for the short time part. That's what is a chayiv. But how could there be a chayiv? It's nichsa yisayim. It must be that Rabbi Yaakov holds that if you have a tam, will also be maimed enough purpose to pay even from nichsa yisayim. That was Rava's approach. Abai had exactly the opposite approach. It's a Sharamud, and you're potter on the shor tam, and you did a sharamud, and you didn't do any shmir at all. So you're fully liable for the nezek sholi. But the first half is the shor tam shaboy. The shor tam shaboy, we can't collect from because he holds, Rebecca holds, you're not going to be maimed in apotropos for shor tam. So you're only chayiv the sharamud one. So those were the two opinions of how to understand Rabbi Yaakov. Rava held the chatzi nezek was the chatzi nezek of the shortam shaboy, and Abaye learned when Rabbi Yaakov said you pay chatzi nezek, you're paying the chatzi nezek of muad because you can't pay for the tam because we're not ma'amed enough patropos. So therefore, you could see there could be a difference of opinion in what Rabbi Yaakov held. We also had a discussion which will come into play today of Rishus Mishana. If the apotropos had a shor hamuad, and now the child is an adult, so he could take back control over the animal, does it reset back to a shor tam again or not? Why would it do that? Everybody knows the famous sign: beware of owner, forget the dog, right? So Vayitzachos could have to do with who is watching it. Okay, and with that, we could start at the two dots, about 8 lines down on Daf Mem Amud Aleph. Tanu Rabbanan, apotropsim mishalmin min ha'aliyah. If apotropsim pay, they pay min ha'aliyah, which means they, even if the value of the animal doesn't meet that, they still have to pay. Okay? So just line up in Rashi. Mishalmin aliyah nezek. Ve'ein mishalmin kofer. But if if the animal that the apotropos was watching killed a person, so his negligence led to the death of a person, the apotropos nevertheless does not pay kofer. Mantana kufra kapara. It must be that he holds kofer is a kapara. It's not nezek. If it damages, well then the apotropos should be responsible for damages. It must be. It's just a kapara, like a carbon. And the Yasmi lav b'nei kaparnin, and the Yisoimim whose ox did the damage, they're not b'nei kapara, they're minors. Omer Rab Chisda, Rabbi Shmuel b'noi shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Berekehi. Who is the Tana that holds kufr kapara? It is Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berekehi. It's not be learned. It says, Rachman Litzlan, if someone's ox kills a person, im kofer yushas olav, the Nosan Pidyon Nafshoy. He gives Pidyon Nafshoy. The question is, whose Pidyon? Pidyon of whose Nefesh? The main Nizik. The Tanakama says it's the value of the Nizik. So we assess whatever the value of the Nizik is, I guess how much he would be sold for as a slave. And that is the amount of money that the owner of the Shor Mazik has to pay the family of the Nizik. He can't pay the Nizik. The Nizik is no longer alive. Rabbi Shmuel B'nosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Berekehi Omer, the Mei Mazik. He's paying his own. He's redeeming his own soul. My lab, let's say that the svara of their machlokes as to whether or not it's the main nizik or the main mazik is as follows: the Rabbanan savi kofer mamanu. The Rabbanan hold when you pay kofer, you're paying mammon. What are you paying for? For what you damaged. What did you damage? The life of the nizik. So you have to pay for the nizik's value. That's why it's the main nizik. Rabbi Shmuel b'noi shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Berekehi savar kofer kapara. I'm bailing out my soul. Whose soul am I bailing out? Not his, mine. I did the Avera. Therefore, it makes sense that it should be the value of the mask. Omer Papa, nice try, but you don't have a good try. Loy, I can make a different argument. I can say the Chula Alma Kufr Kapara. I can say that everybody agrees that Kofer is only a Kapara. So that makes sense for Rabbi Shmuel ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Berekehi, why you pay the main mazik. But how would you be able to explain if Kufr Kapara why you should pay the main nizik? How do you get your redemption? You get your redemption by paying the value of the nizik. Rabbi Shmuel ben Yosy, Rabbi Yechon ben Breka, Sovar b'damazik shemina. My time with Rabbanon. What is the svara of the Rabbanon? Where do they get this from? That it is b'damazik shemina. So Zok the Gemara. Now Rashi has a different girsa than our Gemara, because Rashi says Nemra Shisa Lamaila, v'Nemra Shisa Lamata. The Gemara is gershit fakert, unless Rashi's out of order. Because if you look at Rashi, Rashi's quoting Nemra Shisa Lamaila first. So Rashi Nemra Shisa Lamaila in the Mei Veladois Kasher Yasis Olav Balo Isha. If a man hits a pregnant woman and she loses her children, the man who punched the woman, he has to pay the value of the velados. In other words, the value of the nizik. The Nemar Shisa Lamata, regarding our sugya of Vim Kofer Yushas Olav. So we learn Mala Alon B'din Nizik. The Rabbanan says, just like the Shisa of the Chiyuv of payment, when someone kills Ubarim, he pays the value of the Ubarim. Afkan, so too, when it says Shisa, regarding Kofer, it's B'din Nizik, it's the value of the victim. Rabbi Shmuel Benoi, Shel, Rabbi Yochanan, and Ben Breika, Savar, but not on Pidyon Nav Shoiksid. He's redeeming his soul. So his soul is his value. Rabbanon ain't Pidyon Nav Shoiksid. Yes, he is giving money to redeem his soul. But how much money does it take to redeem his soul? Kishaminon, but it is Shaminon. Who said that to redeem his soul, he has to pay the value of his soul? Maybe to redeem his soul, he has to pay the value of the nizik. Beautiful. Mishabei Chalei, Rava l'Rav Nachman. Rava was telling Rav Nachman, I met a guy, what a massive Talmud Chacham. He's mamish off the charts. I met with Rav Acha bar Yaakov, the Adam Gadol. Rava was raving to Rav Nachman what a hafaldik guy Rav Acha bar Yaakov was. So Amalei Rav Nachman said, okay, you're tempting me. I want to meet this guy. If he happens to come to you, bring him to me. I'd love to meet him. You're telling me he's such a big Talmud Chacham. Let me have an opportunity to have a chat with him. So Ki Asa Lagabe, when they brought Rab Acha bar Yaakov to Rab Nachman, he told him, Rab Nachman told Rab Acha bar Yaakov, Boy minoi milsa. Ask for me a shaila. Let me see. Ask me a kasha. Present the Indian that we can have a chance to have a discussion about. Boy minoi. This is what he asked Rab Nachman. Shor shel shnei shutfin. There was a shor of two shutfin. Ketzad mishalman kofer. How would it pay kofer? So Reuven and Shimon own an ox with shutfis. It stoises. How would you pay kofer? Do you say mishalem high kofer v'high kofer? Each individual owner who has a responsibility to redeem his own life because his animal killed somebody, so then they each have to pay kofer to redeem their own life. Kofer echad amar rechmana, v'lo shnei kofer. The problem is it doesn't say you pay twice kofer. You pay once kofer. So that's not logical. If you suggest high chatzi kofer v'high chatzi kofer, that's also a problem because each guy won't have his kapara. Kofer shalem amar rechmana. So the problem is when you look at the mazik, he has to pay kofer once. When you look at the nizik, he has to receive kofer once. If there's shutz in there, how are you going to do it? So that's an interesting question. At the Yosy v'kama ayin ba, as Reb Nachman was saying, wow, that's an interesting shaila. Let me ponder it. That hektish will be paid. Chai ve'erchen memashkenoisa. Chai ve'chatois v'shomish. What if you're chai ve'korban chatos or nosham? There ain't memashkenoisa. And Rashi says, you know why? Because we're not worried. You want your kapara. You want your kapara, so you know it's for yourself. You're for sure going to bring that carbon eventually. But Erechon is not a kapara; it's just a donation. There, you need to be mashkin. Chayve karfin mai. What category does kofer fit into? Is it considered a kapara and the guy's going to pay anyway, or is it considered mai? Even the kapara who kechatas v'ashon dami, and therefore makmer chami iluye, the mazik takes it seriously, and he'll for sure eventually pay, and therefore v'loy by mashkune. Since he's giving it to his friend, he's not paying it to hektish, he's not buying a carbon with it, he's owing somebody money, so he looks at it as mamanahu, he looks at it like a regular chay, and he'll say the check's in the mail. And he's not going to take it seriously, and therefore, we have to seize a mashka from him. Inami, or I have another reason why we should have to take a mashka from him. Kivan the huloi chata, he didn't do the aver himself. He didn't kill anybody. Umamayne huda azik. So it's not as severe as if he himself would have killed somebody. Therefore, lechamer milsa iluya, he's not going to take it so seriously, and therefore uvoy mishkune, we're going to have to take a mashkan from him. So Reb Nachman was just got bombarded with two questions, and he couldn't answer either one. Amalei said, Shavkan, let me be. Istager b'kamaisa. You've already overwhelmed me and confused me with your first shaila. I couldn't answer. So forget about the second shaila. So clearly Reb Nachman was a shtickle blown away by Rav Acha's shaila. It reminds me of Dovi Frank. Remember Dovi Frank? What a genius he was? So when we were learning Yeridea together, so we all scheduled our fahers by a Forsheimer because he went easiest on you. And he decided, I'm not worried. He's going to take his fair by Krepenya, the Shner Zaydim, who would rip you to shreds. His fahers would take like a day at a time. So he takes it by Krepenya. After the fair, he comes back and he's smiling. We ask how to go. Right? And then Krepenya comes back with his head spinning and he tells us, Chavusha, I never had such a hard day in my life. This guy ripped me to shreds and wiped the floors with me. And there's a series of like 8 fahers you have to take to get smicha. So by the next 7 fahers, Dovi always took his fahers by him. A week before Dovi's faher, Kerpenya's chavrusa would come over to our chabura and said, my chavrusa took off a week to prepare to faher you. It was gewaldig. And he spoke with an English accent, so people thought, he's probably an Amoritz, he's English. No, he used to wipe the floors with them. It was gewaldig. Zog to Gemara. In other words, Keprenya said, "Istager b'kamaisa," but at first he already knocked me off kilter. He's a computer IT specialist. He works for the fire department of New York State. I'm sorry. I think so. Yeah. Oh, he's in carpeting. That was his fault. But I think he became a computer expert. Oh, Tanur Rabban. Shalu. Well, I wonder why I made you think of it now. Shalu b'cheskas tam v'nimtzamuit. What happens if there's a shoyl? A shoyl is responsible for all issues that occur during a shayla, and he borrowed an ox from his friend, and his friend told him, this is a shor tam. V'nimtzamuit. It turned out it was a muit. And of course it did damage. And of course the shoyl wasn't expecting it to be such a wild ox, because he assumed it was a normal ox. So the halacha is, Bailam Mishal and Chati Nezek. V'shor Mishal Chati Nezek. The shor has to be Chati Nezek, because any shor, even if it was a shor tam that did damage, the shor would be responsible to pay Chati Nezek. The Nezek shol in the other half, the Bailam has to pay, because the shol shouldn't be responsible for that, because he had no idea that it was a move. What would happen if it was Huad Bevei Shoyl? The shoyl received a shor tam, and it stoiced 3 times by the shoyl, and now it became a muad. V'hichziru lebailam, and he gave it back to the bailam. Then bailam mishalman chati nezek. So that would tell us about a machlokes we learned yesterday of rishus mishana. It seems from this halacha that this bride holds rishus mishana, because even though the animal was a muad by the base shoyl, when it goes back to the owner, it resets back to become a shor tam. So this seems to say rishus mishana. The Gemara is going to discuss it and deflect that raya. The shoyl potter beklum, the shoyl is potter from anything when he gives it back, because once again it's reset to a tam, and the bailam are responsible. Amar. So let's now drill down and get a deeper understanding of this brisa. Shoyl b'cheskas tam, v'nimtza mu'it, bailam mishalom chati nezek, v'shoyl chati nezek. Break the Gemara. Why should the shoyl have to pay anything at all? B'mai leimalei, let him tell the mashi, let him tell the owner, Tura she'ili, I borrowed from you an ox. Ari loishili. I didn't borrow a lion, so I shouldn't be responsible for this wild animal at all. As Rashi says, Nitirusa da Ari like Kabila Salai. I never accepted upon myself to watch a real predator. The itam have a nagach. If it was a tam, I wouldn't have nagach. So never mind, I shouldn't pay chatinezek. You're telling me I should pay chatinezek? I shouldn't even pay chatinezek, because a normal animal would never have done this. So why should I even be chayiv for the chatinezek? You know why the shoyl has to pay chati nezek? Shehikir boy shunakhin. Right away, the Shoyl recognized that there was a natkin. So let's hear Rashi. Sheikavash natkin. Avolo yodo shenagach gimel nagichas. He didn't know it was a mut, true, but he knew it had stoiced at least once before. So he knew this ox was somewhat troubled. Hilchach netirusa the tam nagach kabbalah. Okay, so he didn't accept upon himself the shmir of a real mu'at, but he at least knew that there's some trouble here. And Ture, he should have watched it more carefully because that much he knew.
Well, he was ashamed.
He borrowed it.
Is it
A shoyl chai for engine, shoyl chai for everything.
yeah, is it the lender's responsibility to tell him, declare what the animal is? He has to.
Yeah, because if I'm borrowing an ox, because I wanted to plow my field, and it's a wild beast, you'd want to know, right? So he had an inkling of an idea. He can't totally absolve himself from any responsibility. Frank the Gemara, let him still say ta'am she'ili muad loy she'ili. I did rent from you, I borrowed from you tam, not a muad. Zok the Gemara, that's not a taina. Mishum da Amar lei, because the owner will tell him soif itam hava. If it was a tam, palga niska boy shlume. So hashanami zil shlim palga niska. You thought it was a tam, and therefore you should only pay chatzin. Well, that's all we're asking you for. But namelay, let the borrower come up with another excuse to weasel out his way out of paying, and he could have said as follows: itam hava mishtal migufa. If it was a tam, then the maximum exposure that I would have had to pay chatzin nezek would be the maximum value of this ox that I borrowed. Zok to Gemara, that's not a tiny either, because mishum the Amar lei soif at lav tura boy shlumi ledidi. You have to give me back my ox. So if you have to give me back my ox, so you owe the full value of the ox, and that's all we're asking you to pay your chatzin nezek up until the full value of the ox. V'nei malei, let him say, itam hava. Let the shoyl say, I could have avoided paying completely, because itam hava. If this ox would have really been a tam, hava moedina umaftarina. I could have been quickly moide. If you hold that chatzin is a knasa and moide knas vachach bo edim is potter, I could have said, I could have been moide and it would be potter. And I couldn't have been moide and become potter. Namely, I could have done something else. Itamu, had I known that it was a tam, if it was really a tam, that is, have a marikna leila agma. I would have hid it away, and I would have told them, sorry, the animal's gone. I can't pay you. Frek Toshis, he didn't do it. He thought it was a tam. The whole word is that when he borrowed it, he thought it was a tam, and he wasn't moida. He thought it was a tam, and he didn't take it to the agam. So how could you have a tie that? Oh, how did I know? If it was a tam, I would have taken it. You thought it was a tam, you didn't take it. So what's how start shining? So Zok Toshis, you have to say, speaking, that right after it's toist, the Baal said, yeah, it's a mood, by the way. So then you could say, well, if it was a tam, I would have taken it. But because you told me it was a mood, I knew that wouldn't be effective. So El Hacha b'mayaskinon, Lamaisa, he has a taina. He could have gotten out of paying. And Tosfos asked, I don't understand. Could someone actually make a taina that I would have done something illegal? Memela, I would have been moida. That's within the law. But to hide it away, to avoid payment, is that a taina that I could have done an avla to steal from somebody? So Tosfos answers. I forgot what Tosfos answers. So let me look at Tosfos. But it's a very tema. My taina huzu. So that's his kasha. So he answers. V'nirali sharat shaloymar b'toich dvar melu shayisi oisa hayonizik mispasher imi b'dvar mu'it vayomoichali. What I could have done, I could have hid it in a way, but not refuse to pay. I could have told the nizik, you know what? Let's negotiate. In other words, by hiding it away, it's putting pressure on the nizik. And I'll tell the nizik, let's negotiate, and I would have gotten a better deal out of the nizik. Now I have 0 cards to negotiate. Okay, Zok the Gemara, so why is it that the shoyel should be chayiv at all? He has all these good claims to exonerate him from any type of payment. Kegoin the actim veidina v'tafsei. The machlok is if it's the bezdin who was typhus the shaylan the gesois, or if it's the baldin who was typhus because the little gimel changing the gears with tziyonim that it's the baldin. But whatever it was, right after the nezek, it was seized. So therefore, there is no option at all for him to get out of anything because it was already seized. In fact, Gemara, Ihachi, Bailim, Amai, Mishalman, Chatinezek. If that's the case, let's look at it the opposite way around. The shoyel has to pay Chatinezek because he's stuck. They got the ox. There's nothing he can do. But we said that the other Chatinezek that the shoyel is not responsible for, the Bailim have to pay for it. Why do the Bailim have to pay for it? Why can the Bailim collect that money from the shoyel and say it was the shoyel's fault that the animal got seized? Namely, let the owner of the animal tell the shoyel, you got to pay up my half a nezek too. You know why? Because at faste l'turoi biyodaman dolimatin l'shtudinabade. You were negligent. Because of you, my animal got seized. You should have protected it from getting seized. My animal got seized, but who did it get seized by? By somebody that there's no way I could negotiate with. He has all the cards. I have 0 cards. So for you putting me into such a bad negotiating position, you owe me the other Chatinez. As if he could have avoided paying. Zogt the Gemara, the shoyel could tell the mashal, I didn't cost you any money. Even if I would have given you back the ox, lav minoch have a shakulei, Bezdin the Baldin would have been typhus from you. So don't say I messed you up. They would have been typhus from you anyway. So let the owners know they would not have been typhus for me. I'm not a shlemazel like you who let them be typhus. If it would have come to me, you know what I would have done? I would have quickly shipped it off somewhere where they couldn't get it. So, weiter, I could have saved myself, and because of your negligence in letting Bezdin or the Baldin seize the animal, you're costing me money. I'm going to come after you for that. Your shoyel's chayv anoints. Mishum Amalei, the shoyel said, "Haklish kan kapara." You would have had to pay anyway, because soif lav me'aliyah have a mishtalmi. It doesn't make a difference if you would hide away the animal. It's a mu'id. So they would come after you for the money anyway. So you can't blame me that I costed you money. I didn't cost you a penny. You would have had to pay in full with the seizure of the animal, without the seizure of the animal. So Haklish can cover that. Zakt Gemara, Hanich, see this shoyel sees that the mashal is mamish a China hacker to get out of anything. So he's telling me, I'm a China hacker. I'm coming after you. The same way I'm coming after you, I can hack the Nizak of China too. I'm a good China hacker. You see, I know how to do it. So Zakt Gemara, it's been a little mishtalmi. Zakt Gemara, Hanicha heke de islay nichsi. That's very good if this mazik, the owner of the ox, has other resources, other assets that he could pay from. But heke de lesle nichsi, what if everything he owns is in his wife's name? So he has nothing else besides this ox. So then even if it's a mu'id, it's still limited. The collection is still limited to this ox. And he could have said, in that ox, I could have hidden away. Michael Maymar. So at the end of the day, since you have this twisted owner who would have gotten out of paying, now he can tell you the shoyel messed him up because the shoyel allowed the animal to be seized. Now he has to pay. Dr. Gemara, the shoyel could still say, I don't owe you a penny. Mishum the Omer Lei, the shoyel could tell the mashal, Ki heiche de mishtabadna ledidach. I am a shubit to you. No doubt about it. I took your ox, I didn't give it back to you. And since I didn't give it back to you, I'm owing you money. True, I agree with that. But guess what? Hachanami mishtabadna leheich. I am also mishubit, the same way I have to pay you money, I have to pay the nizik money. You know why? Because of Rab Nosson. So I could pay off my choiv to you, Mr. Mashil, by directly paying your creditor. Because of Rab Nosson. The Tanya of Nosson Neimer, Minayin Lenoisha Bechaveri Mono, Bechaveri Bechaveri. If Reuven owes Shimon $100 and Shimon owes Levi $100, Reuven pays directly to Levi. Minayin Shematzin Mizeh, Benoiston Zeh. Tamad Loimer Venosan Lasher Osham Loi. It doesn't say Venosan Lasher Lovam Ibanu. It doesn't say you pay back the fellow who lent you the money. No, you pay back the person who is owed. Meaning you look at the whole chain, and at the end of the day, the last guy holding the cards, he's the guy who gets paid. That is the law. So Zukt, the shoyel to the mashal, yes, you're angry with me, I didn't pay you. But I paid your creditor. If I paid your creditor, then I've settled with you as well. So that's why the shoyel has to pay Chatzin Nezek, and the mashal pays Chatzin Nezek, and the Nizik walks away fully compensated. Now let's discuss the second line of this brayso that we quoted a moment ago. Who would bevei shoyel? What if the shoyel allowed it to shtosh 3 times and now it became a muad? And he gave it back to the bailim. The halacha is the Bailam Mishalim Chati Nezek v'Shoyel Patim Miklum. So it seems to say that's Rishus Mashana. Seifa Rishus Mashana. Because even though it was a muad by the shoyl, when he gave it back to the owner, it resets and becomes a tam. Why don't you say the same thing in the Reisha? Yes, it was a muad by the owner, but when he gives it to the shoyl, why doesn't it also reset to become a tam? The whole first part of the brisa says that if it's damaged by the shoyl, it pays the nizik like a shara muad, right? That was all tanya. The shoyl said, I didn't know it was a muad, I thought it was a tam, but why is it a tam? Don't we say if it changes rishus, automatically it will reset to be a tam? And here, when the shoyl gives it back to the mashal, it does reset to become a tam. Yet when the mashal gave it to the shoyl, we say it doesn't reset. Reisha rishus ain't mishan. Rabbi Yochanan Tavra, you have to break this brisa in half because you're right; they're contradictory. Misha Shanazu, the Tana, who is the author of the first halach of the brisa, who says rishus ain't mishana, and therefore the muad by the owner remains a muad when he gives it to the shoyl. Loy Shanazu couldn't possibly have been the same Tana as the seifa of our brisa that says that when the shoyl gives it back to the mashal, it resets back to becoming a tam. Rabbi Amar, no, you don't need to say it's a machlokes. We can make them both agree. Midareisha rishus ein meshana, seifa nami rishus ein meshana. So if that's the case, why is it that we say it goes back to becoming a tam when the shoyl gives it back to the owner? The seifa hainu taima mishum do amrlei lav kol kvinach the meyadas lei liturai. You can't make my ox a muad. And the way the Mefarshim explained this is, as a shoyl, you didn't watch it as good as you could have. You definitely didn't watch it as good as you could have. So that doesn't make it into a muad. I'm sorry. I'm not going to suffer because you didn't do the proper shmir on my animal. My animal is not a muad. It's a calm, nice animal. It would never do damage. You made it mishiga. You caused it. But that's not a muad, and therefore, it's not a muad. So it's a big chiddush. It's a big chiddush that even though it's twice 3 times, I could say it's twice 3 times because you didn't watch it properly, because you didn't really care. You weren't a tree loner. But you'll see by me, it's going to be a tam. That's a big chiddush. Rav Papa Amar, midasefer rishus mashana, reishanami rishus mashana. So if it's rishus mashana, why is it that even though the owner gave the shoyla a muad, why don't we say it resets back to being a tam if you hold rishus mashana? Reishanu taima mishum dechol mokaim shahoylech shem ba'olav olav. When an animal goes from the mashal to the shoyl, it still retains its original name as the animal of Ruve. And therefore, even though normally you say Rishus Mashana, we don't look like this was a change of Rishus at all, because it's always the Bailam's animal. Because it's always the Bailam's animal. So then, if that's the case, so on the way back, why don't you have the same problem? If it became a mood by the shoyl, why didn't you say it was always the Bailam's animal? So I was struggling to find the answer to that. The Shita Mekubetzes brings down from one of the Rishonim that says that's the way it goes. Too bad. You say Shem Bailav Allah when the owner gives it to the shoyl, and therefore it retains its status of muad, but you don't say that on the way back. I'm sure the article must comment on this line. What does he say on this line? The last thing of Shem Bailav Allah. He must explain why it only works one way and not the other way. It's a very long one? Oh, okay. So that I just saw from the Shita Mekubetzes brings down. Does he bring down from the Shita Mekubetzes? You want to read it? Read it. It's important. It is important. So you mind reading it? For the beginning, I don't know. It's important. It's important. Okay, seriously. We got you.
Several commentators address the following difficulty. If the ox is regarded as being under the owner's jurisdiction, even after being transferred to the borrower, and the muad status is acquired under the borrower, should be regarded as having been acquired under the owner.
That's right. That's the kasha.
Accordingly, when the ox then returns to the owner, its status should remain unchanged. One answer is that the owner's hold over the ox while it is under the borrower's jurisdiction is by no means complete. Rather, during that period, the animal is under the shared jurisdiction of owner and borrower. With regard to sustaining the muad status, it acquired under the owner, we give primacy to the continued jurisdiction of the owner. With regard to creating a new muad status under the borrower's care, we give primacy to the jurisdiction of the borrower. See Yam Shel Shlomo. For other approaches to this question, see Shita Mikvatzis, quoting of Eliezer.
Okay, so what he's timing is while it's by the shoyl, even though it's sort of a joint situation because the owner still has his hand in this ox, while it's by the shoyl, we'll treat it like a muad. But lemaisa, it's not really a muad, so that therefore, when it goes back to the original bailim, he's now in control. He's the primary partner, and therefore has the status of a tam. So at the end of the day, I just learned today that there's 3 levels of archbro. If it's a pasha to teretz, they just say the teretz. If it's very complicated, they'll just say sisi the mukabetzes. And if it's somewhat complicated, not kafer, they'll be ma'irich and say sisi the mukabetzes. So there's actually a hybrid svara. So this is a little bit of a difficult svara, but based on what Dovi read from the art scroll, it has to do with the balance of the control of the animal. And while it's by the shoyl, we give precedence to the shoyl scenario, but that same animal going back is considered a tam underneath the owner.
I think Dovi needs to read the part in the next square brackets too.
Oh, there's another paragraph as well?
Yeah.
Okay, Dovi, Victor is requiring you lend the next. Okay, so Dovi had enough. Now he said, I'm going to read it. Okay, so I'll read it. Where am I reading? There's some question. There's some question as to whether Rabba's reasoning of it is not within your power to render Mayak Samuad. Oh, so that's the earlier Shaila. And the Papa's reasoning of wherever it goes, the name of its owners upon it, extend to an agent appointed by the court. If that would apply to an apotropos or are limited to a borrower. Yeah, so the Rashba does this whole sugya really is mastered by the Rashba. The Rashba is very active in step by step going through this sugya, because there's a lot of discussion here as to what the apotropos' role would be versus a shomer's role. Okay, Kavaltik. Let's see the Heilige Gemara weiter. We said that if it's a shor that's trained to kill and it kills a person, the shor is not chayv misa, because the Torah says when does a shor get misa? If it's v'chiyigach shor, if the shor on its own is a murderous shor, but if we are prompting it and training it and encouraging it and enticing it to kill, that's not called a shor anak. Iboilu, fact the Gemara, we learned that for sure such a shor doesn't get killed. Pretty much, yeah. Iboilu, mau legabe mizbeach. We know a shor that's a nakhan, you're not allowed to bring as a carbon. How about this shor? It killed a person, but it's not liable to misa because it was trained that way. Would this ox be allowed to be brought as a carbon? Rav Amar kosher, Shmuel Amar pasul. Rav said it could be brought as a carbon. Shmuel said it cannot be brought as a carbon. Rav Amar kosher, onusu. It's killing a person is an onus because he was trained to do that. Ushmuel Amar pasul because Hari never by Avera. Never mind that it was an onus, it doesn't matter. An Avera was done with this ox. It's inappropriate that an ox that an Avera was done with should be used for a carbon. Meishay Freik the Gemara. Min ha-behema. When the Torah discusses what animals can be brought, the Torah says, Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'amarta lehem, Adam ki Yaakov mikem carbon Hashem, and there's a whole series of mi'utim. Min ha-behema, from the behemoths, not all. Min ha-bakar, from the bakar, not all. Min ha-tzoin, some tzoin, not all. So we have 3 mi'utim here. Min ha-bakar is lahoitzis hanevat. If someone served this animal as a void zara, this animal may no longer be brought as a carbon. Min ha-tzoin, lahoitzis ha-muktzah. If the animal itself was set aside to be a void zara, once again, it cannot be brought as a carbon. Min ha-tzoin, lahoitzis ha-nageach. An animal that stoices and kills people, such an animal is not appropriate to be brought in the mizbeach. So you're going to ask me, I don't understand. If it kills somebody, it's chayv misa. So how can you be makar of it? They're killing it. The territory is there was no edim. There's many cases where it's possible for a nekeach to walk free because they weren't the proper aid. Amar Rab Shimon, im nemar roiva, the Torah said min habehema to exclude a roiva. So if that's the case, lama lama negeach, I would have already known. I would have already known if a roiva cannot be an animal that was born, a human. If such an animal cannot be brought as a carbon, so the geich also cannot be brought as a carbon. What is the correlation? So Rashi says, they both have a status as the same type. Because if there's Adam, then the animal will be killed. So why should the Torah have to mention both of them? If the Torah told me Roiva can't be brought on the Mizbeach out of no Negeach, and vice versa. Zok the Bryce. I'll tell you why. There is a chumrah in the Aveira of Roiva that doesn't apply to Negeach. So I can make an argument, maybe Roiva can't be brought as a carbon, but maybe Negeach could, and vice versa. And let's itemize. Roiva asaba oinus karotzen. Even if it was an oinus, it doesn't make a difference. The animal will have to be killed anyway. If the animal was born a person,
They know what the animal's intention is.
I'm not sure, but the question is, the Tosfos actually touches on it, so let's look at it. How is it possible anyway for an animal to be roiv oinus? Wanting to know if the animal wants it or not. The animal obviously got interested. There was a yikum perkum, right? So Mamela, we know for sure that he was interested. What happened is this animal was in heat for its own min, and then a woman came with a kvatzoi ve'asuela, and then she brought him on him. So that's an inus. So even if it happened by inus, the roiveh will get killed. Mashenk and negeach, where they didn't make inus karatzoi. Okay. So now already we see how this is relevant to our sugya. We have to see what that means. On the other hand, if it would have said negeach, I would say negeach mishalom koifer, and that's why it cannot be brought as a carbon. But revei ain't mishalom koifer. Lefichach, therefore, hutrach leimer reveya, hutrach leimer negeach. We need a min habehema to be memayit reveya, and we need minatzain to be memayit negeach. So now let's go drill down and understand what the Brisa said. If we would say Reveya, I wouldn't have known Negeach, because Reveya also ba'oinus karotin, but Negeach loy also ba'oinus karotin. In what respect do we not make oinus karotin? Lav lekarbon, it means lekarbon, meaning it's oinus karotin by Reveya, but it's not oinus karotin to prohibit a Negeach from being brought in the Mizbeach. So you have a raya to our shaila, you have a raya to Rav that in fact a negeach ba'oinus is allowed to be brought as a carbon. So that's not what we're saying. L'ktola. Sorry.
I have a meaning why Revei would be more chamradik than negeach. Then we said negeach is also more chamradik than b'shalom koifer.
So therefore, if it was a negeach b'mezid with Adam, therefore, you wouldn't be able to bring it on the Mizbeach. Why? Because we know that the oinus, it would be able to be brought as a carbon. We're comparing it being able to be brought as a carbon if it was an oinus versus if it was barotzen. But the pasuk might be going on barotzen. Okay. Let's see Rashi, because Rashi touches upon what you're saying. So all it means is that even the maskana, it wouldn't be killed if it was an oinus. How can I be mistaber? It's mistaber to say that way. The yamet the carbon, if you're saying we're talking about a carbon, negeach loy also boy oinus karotzen, lav oinus dideksiv, lav rotten dideksiv. It doesn't say anything in the Torah about if it's an oinus or rotten. It's not that the Torah addresses oinus, the Torah addresses rotten. The Torah just says negeach. The negeach cannot be brought into the Mizbeach. And the lav l'ktola, it has to be referring to Misa, and that is, you don't see anywhere the Torah says that you won't be brought into the Mizbeach if it's Oinus, but you do see that the Torah tells us that it's not killed if it was an Oinus, because it says v'chiyach shar, and not v'loy shegichu. Let's see Rashi loy l'ktola, because that answers, I think, a little bit what Mati's asking. Loy l'ktola, v'lahachi ka'amar, negeach loy asa ba'oinus karotzain, le'inyin skila b'makim edim. Hilchach Eloi Mate Kra in carbon, if the Torah would not have told us that a negeach cannot be brought in the Mizbeach, Loi Nafkulan Mi Roiva, we wouldn't have been able to learn a Roiva. Afilu Ki Avad Baratzain, even in a case where the animal is doing it Baratzain, the live soil, the Kal Huma Reveil in Katola. So it's kal even in one respect. If it's kal even in one respect, we shouldn't be able to learn it. Once we have the pasuk, it doesn't tell me that the kula is not there. It just tells me that even with the kula, it's still also to be brought as a carbon if it's not a nice, if it's amazing. Okay, so that's the shtickle gemara. So now we know we have a machlokes. We still have the machlokes remain. We haven't answered the shaila between Rav and Shmuel if onions is kosher l'mizbeach or not. We have two other unanswered shailas. The shailas that Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov asked of Rabbi Nachman. One is two shotfim can pay kofer, and if you were mamashkin for kofer. So we have a lot of unresolved issues that we learned today. Zok to gemara weiter. Amar mar noigeach mishalem es a kofer. Noigeach mishalem es a kofer. Reveya ain't mishalem es a kofer. A reveya wouldn't pay kofer. How is reveya means no? So it doesn't mean killing. Where's kofer involved? Hechadami. Ilay the rava of a katla. If we're talking about an animal that was reveya, a woman, and it killed her, I could understand how that would happen, right? Mali katla bakarna, mali katla b'revia. A murder is a murder. Regardless, there should be a chiyuv. Regardless, there should be a chiyuv of kofer. The Ella, what do you have to say? The Rav of a katla. There was a revia done, and it didn't kill her. So, for Gemara, that's pashut. You don't pay kofer. Hide the loy mishalem kofer. We shouldn't lekatlahu. It didn't kill her. Amar Abaye la'olam the Rav of a katla. But you know what happened? They took her to Bezin and Bezin killed her because she did an Aveira. She was nirva to the animal. You might say, command the katadami, since because of this animal she was killed because she had a chiv misa, kamash malon, that's not considered killing, and therefore this animal is not considered a negeach, and although the animal gets killed, but the owner does not have to pay kofer. Rav Omer, la'olam the Rav of the katla. No, it could be that Itaka killed her. Mali katla b'karnai, mali katla b'revia. There's a very big difference. Karen kavanasi lahazik. When an animal stoishes, it's trying to kill somebody. It's an anger. Hi kavanasi lanos atzmayu. The animal was having enough from this interaction, and she got crushed. It's not called like a chiyuv of Karen, where the animal wanted viciously stois. But my plea. So what would the machlokes be? B'regel shadarsa al gabi tinnik b'chatzar nizik. Is there a chiyuv kofer only by Karen, or there is also a chiyuv kofer by regel? What would be if an animal was walking the chatzar nizik? So there in the chatzar nizik there's a chiyuv for regel, and instead of the animal breaking kalim, the animal killed the baby. So that's mamish this case. La Abaye mishalem kofer. According to Abaye, she'll pay kofer, but la Rava, you don't pay kofer because Rava says if it's lahamna osoy, you don't pay kofer only if it's kavanosoi lahas. Tali kavasa the Rav, shar her tzadin, einoi chayev misa, the kosher legabim mizbeach, the pnei shukamuza kitzadoinis. So we have a brayso that supports Rav that a shar that kills ba'oinis is mutter to be brought on the mizbeach. So I just want to learn this very interesting tosfos. Why is it that the shar gets killed if she gets killed in Bezdin? She brought it upon herself. She lured this animal. She wanted to have relations with this animal. She started the interaction. So why is the shar responsible? Why is he even indirectly responsible that he caused it to be killed in Bezdin? He didn't start up with her. She started up with him. Because the animal normally doesn't have a taiva to be with a woman. It's not normal.
The other text was
So v'yesh leiber zok toisus k'moshe pirish rach shekafetz Allah hashar l'rava. Say it is speaking like that the shor jumped on her, the alba sheba yitzra, and for some reason she got turned on. V'nisratasa, and she was masking. So therefore, we consider it like he initiated the incident. Afilam on the beksubis in perknai the chilasa b'oinis the seifa baratzain the mutter, right? If a woman is raped and then she feels good at the end, she's mutter to her husband, because we say it's alba she Yisrael. Once she's in the act, it's impossible. It's an oinus for her not to have a no. So why don't say the same thing over here? So there's a very big difference. If the bia begins with an oinus, even though the soif bia is barotzin, it won't answer her. Because she only got turned on because the animal showed interest. It's not that the animal was already inside her and then she was masking. right? She was masking once the animal showed interest, so even the tchilas bia was baratain, and therefore vasur l'cholama budin shenergan shall be killed, and therefore the Gemara says it's not to say that the animal should get killed as well. Okay, we will stop here and we'll be mamshich tomorrow.